All right. I'm excited to introduce our community today to Andrew Ronchetto. Andrew is a visionary and co-founder at Be On. Andrew is pioneering digital holistic wellness platforms, innovation, and transformative growth. Welcome, Andrew.
Thanks, Lindsey, for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
I am thrilled to have you here today as well. And I just feel like maybe our jump off point together is to give our community, our listeners, a little bit of an idea of Be On. Like what inspired you to create? You're obviously an entrepreneur. You probably get excited about life looking a little bit different every day. What do your days hold right now?
Oh man, that's a loaded question right there. I would say it's totally different than what it was in my previous chapter. Beyond came out of this me actually having an incident at work where I got hurt, and realizing that as I was working with trainers, I was working with a fitness coach as well as a physical therapist to help me through that time. I felt like a traffic cop, like that they weren't intentionally trying to talk past each other, but just the lack of ability for me to have a space where I could work for myself and bring them into it and really have this holistic view. I know that word's overused, but just this ability to see everything that's going on and put me at the center of it, I felt was missing in my own experience. And I'm sure others, especially some of your audience, can appreciate that, where they just feel almost like a co-pilot to their actual own personal journey. And I wanted to do something to change that. So like my superpower is around technology and consulting and the people aspect of things. And so I just started to say, let's see how we can change that picture. And we built Beyond, which is a holistic wellness platform, like you said, but we put the individual at the center. And what that means for us is we look at these 8 dimensions of what holistic wellness is. So we all talk about the physical and the mental and the spiritual side, but sometimes we forget the environmental or the surroundings us, the financials. We could talk about relationships or your social, intellectual, career, like all of these things that make you you and how interconnected they are. Being able to look at them all in one place and really do something about them where the technology can support you is kind of what we're all about. So it's a journey we're on, just like life itself.
Okay, and so let's just use your real life example with that. Like your story, what does your platform, how would that have looked through your journey if it was
Yeah.
available?
If it was at the time. So it actually kind of was the epitome of our first iteration of the platform, in that how can we help? And I'll say bring practitioners and coaches, advisors, mentors all into a similar experience where they're trying to assist clients and they're part of this surrounding support group of the individual. So how can we help them have the tools and assets that are more consolidated in one space? I don't know about yourself, but at least the research shows that any given coach practitioner will use 5, maybe 10 different technology solutions to bring their services to life in the quote unquote digital world. And being on the reciprocating side of that, it can be a lot. And I don't fault anybody for doing it, because it's kind of a live or die moment. You got to digitalize, you got to be in the present where everybody is. But it's a difficult experience of, well, did they drop it into WhatsApp, or was it a file on Google Drive, or was it in a message? All of these different dynamics where the individual's struggling. So that was kind of the epitome of what we created in the platform, was this idea that it could be a single place where you could set up a journey. And that journey could be, like in my case, recovery. And I could bring the practitioners in, but more if I was coming from a practitioner perspective, bring my client into it and say, hey, when you're on this type of experience that we're going through together with you, here's the things we're going to go through, the steps, the things I want you to try, or the exercises, the activities, the practices I want you to introduce into your day-to-day. But most importantly, let's talk about outcomes and let's figure out what you see the end of this journey looking like, even if it's short term, say a 3-month kind of experience, or even more long term, and how they can do that all in a seamless place. So that's where we really started with Beyond, is helping to navigate that and put it all into one space for that individual.
I know I'm picturing our non-techie people going, I don't even understand what the space looks like. Like it would be like they have, is it an app? Is it they log into something that's their own?
That's correct. It's a web platform you log into at the moment. The apps will be out shortly. But it's a place almost like a whiteboard. Like if you were to put a vision board out there and say, I want to get here and I want to, experience these things along the way. And here's like, I'm going to use some very, catchy terms. Here's how much time I have or capacity I have in my life because life doesn't stop. I wish we could and just put all the energy in that one thing, but sometimes it doesn't. So it's like, if I had a whiteboard out there or a vision board that had all these things about how I wanted to approach this journey, how that's digitalized in a way that can help you get after it in a productive way and talk about it with the practitioners and your family and others in your support group around you, helping you on that journey.
Because it's such a clear picture at that point, right? Is kind of what.
I don't know. I maybe that's a trick question. Like, I think, I mean, I think the picture becomes clearer over time. So maybe that's why we call it a journey from our sides, because this idea that where you start on day one with it, like in my case, the recovery, doesn't mean that's how I'm going to end on like day 90 or day 120. And so this idea that as you go along the journey, you refine it and you add to it and you take away from it and you see what works and what doesn't. And you do that with a coach. Like, I think that's the best part of thinking about it is having that support group around you is essential. And the ability for them to engage and bring your intellectual property for that matter, or I'll just say your thoughts into the process is so important, I think, to helping people get where they want to be. So I see it as a progressive picture rather than maybe it's fully baked out.
Yes, no, and thank you. This is funny. Okay, because our brains went two different places. When I was thinking clear picture, it's that most people don't get to host, to your point. You don't host all these thoughts somewhere. So you don't have that clear ability to look back and go, this is where I've been, and I can see my path, twisting and turning. But at the end of the day, because we're so intentional with your journey, your endpoint, you always know like how to get back to what you're fighting for. And I think with like my clients, sometimes, again, if you don't have people who are good at tracking and if they don't have a coach really guiding them along that way, that if we don't have like success leaves clues, and if we don't have all those clues along the way, it's really hard to not go back and try things that we're like, you know what, that really didn't work for me. Why am I back here banging down the same door when I should really be pivoting and trying something new? So are we both talking the same thing and just in different directions?
Yeah, I think I was at one end and you were at the other and we were meeting at the middle. Like, but 100%. And I think I'll even add to it maybe some color. I think this is why we also try not to go straight into the data so like deep, because I think sometimes by stepping out and I'm going to say looking at the macro of what's happening, like you're talking about, or I think we're both talking about, we can actually see like where the rhythm is to get after the success, so to say, or the outcomes we're trying to get to. And so we even, from a platform perspective, try to focus on the emotional state of an individual more than anything else when we talk about even getting progress updates. Like actually, we laugh about it, but I'm like, one of the questions we ask is how many times have you laughed since the last time you checked in? Mm-hmm. Like, just help us understand like where you are, because that can tell us so much about how you're doing. And then everything else plays out. If you like to check boxes, you can check boxes. But I think this goes to holistic wellness, that everything's so interconnected, the mental, the physical, the social, like being able to understand those different dimensions and what might be at play amongst them is so important.
I 100% agree. And again, in nutrition and fitness world, I think people get so hyper focused on, I need to attack food, I need to attack fitness. And the reality is, if the other pieces aren't flowing, we don't have that nice sustainable growth and health down the road. So I love that you're offering something to pull it all together and bring the importance around it, that, they might not realize that they haven't laughed until they answer that question and they're like, I don't have enough joy in my life right now. It's interesting how people really need some questions to be asked before that is brought to attention. And like, I might need to address that.
Yeah,
So,
and have fun with it. Like, I think we get too serious as well. Like, I
mhm.
either make it or I don't. And this is why, I get a little technical on this. I'm like, this is why I talk about objectives versus goals. It's for me, it's a subtle difference, but it's so important. A goal feels so finite. I will get there by this date.
Mm.
Versus objectives, like I'm going to get there, and I might overshoot it. But if it were a goal, all of a sudden, well, I didn't meet the goal. I overshot the goal. So is that good? Is that bad? Like I'm just, my brain's
Yeah.
rolling. I'm like, wait a second, you did awesome. Let's celebrate. Like, so just even thinking about it that way, like versus, practices versus routines, the way we just approach the situation, I think is so fundamentally important to just getting after what we're trying to achieve and being happy and celebrating what it is.
Right. So let's keep rolling with your example for a moment. But if you were tracking on your platform as your recovery was underway, can your providers also get in and see what you are tracking, or is that more for your own insight so that you're ready to like tell everybody who needs to know?
No, it's for both, and we've looked to build it in a way that the individual has ultimate control over their own data. So I take that to the extreme and say, like, if I want to open that up to another provider, all I got to do is check a box. Okay, maybe a few more clicks than that, but
Mhm.
the point being is it's your data as an individual. It's your life, it's your journey. And too many platforms feel like today it's I have to have the provider signed up or the platforms need to be talking to each other, which is confusing, let's say, for providers, complicated at best, and it really just misses the point. And so what we built with Beyond is this idea that because the individual can own the data that's being collected and generated from their interactions with a provider, with a practitioner, coach, etc., that they can then extend that and share it with others. Can be a part of that same journey. So as it starts with a practitioner say, okay, I'm on the recovery journey with you. Well, let's bring your therapist into it. Let's have them see what's going on so that I'm not talking past them, or you're feeling like, okay, there were 5 exercises he wanted me to do, but he calls them something different. Okay, is there a YouTube video I can show him that he would like? All of these questions that just take time, and honestly, we probably get demotivated by it. Just trying to simplify that experience and say, well, let me show you what he's doing so that I can interact. If you want to add something to it, let's add it, because then he or she can see it as well, and we just move on that path together. And we come back and revisit it once in a while. So it's this idea that I work it a little and I come back and see what's working, what's not, and adjust. So in my life, going through that journey, what it quickly realized is the practices that I have going in my life. Like at that time, I wasn't getting enough sleep. I'll be honest. I'm still working on that one. I feel like I'm on a 2-year journey of recovery. But sleep, eating, some of the fundamentals there. But I was pushing myself too much on I'll say on the exercise side and not getting enough of the others. So I had to change my practices in life while still keeping, a hold of work and family. I had a new baby girl on the way shortly after that. Like there was a lot happening. And so being able to like bring that to the conscious level and say, okay, what can I actually do? And what do I need to do to get better? In my case was, I'm going to say life altering in the sense of I just had to be willing to give up on some things.
Mm.
And because I did that in a more conscious way, it made me feel better about it rather than feeling like I failed. And I think
Yes.
that's an important thing as a part of the process, to just be more conscious about those adjustments and why you're doing them and why they're important to you to do them.
Right. I'm loving this example. I think that all of us could have really used this through those big transitional phases of life. One of my constant conversations is, if we go from being an athlete in high school and maybe even in college to all of a sudden you're now at a desk job as you graduate and then you get married and then to your point, and then a baby and sleep deprivation. There's all these phases that if we could actually see what was happening, we could have adjusted, like you said, along the way. And most of us don't catch it until we're 10 plus years in and going, whoa, what happened? Why doesn't this work for me anymore? Well, because I don't have time for it. Or, yeah. So this would be such a great tool to like hand to our kids at some point of like, use this through your journey of life.
That's the idea. Like, and that we personalize it too, because the way you have gone through life is very different than me. Um, and I think that's where technology has the ability to go deeper than it ever has before. And I don't mean that in the sense of make it hyper personalized so that you can get the 5 things that are most important for you as an individual. I mean, that there's an aspect of importance of helping and using technology to support you in that way. But I think it's more about the intentionality of the technology helping you go deep, because we can customize it without it like, folding in on itself and just, giving you the blue sad face error message. Like, so I think that's part of it here, is like using the technology to help us go hyper focused on ourselves. In a way that allows us to see all the things that are happening, like you're talking about in life, and the progression and what makes sense for us in different spaces.
All right, I know I'm being almost annoying because I need you to keep giving examples with this. So you're saying the technology can help us go deeper. What does that look like if the client's using that aspect?
Well, one is we don't lose a journey. So I think the best part here that we've focused on is because we've made it so that individuals own their data from the point that they start using the platform to the point they decide to delete the data, because it's up to them, they own it. It's all there for them. So everything they want to add in is theirs. Anything or practitioner or work related that they incorporate into it is theirs. And so it just provides this flow and visibility to how things have been progressing over life. And obviously, because we're in our infancy and we haven't been around for a decade or anything like that, we won't be able to see the pattern, so to say. But I think you can appreciate it's like if somebody were tracking their weight every day for 20 years, just to see the peaks and the valleys and probably associate it to life events, I think is so fundamental to help us understand what's influencing those changes. And I think that's the idea here as well, as and the macro level of these different journeys you want to be on or you want to go after, that we can see how those help you through the different stages of life, but also help you with specific outcomes that you're trying to get to, and how your emotional state adjusts as you go through those different journeys all at the same time.
So is the kind of like, is the program so smart that as you're entering things, it's like gathering what it wants to ask next, or is that more human led? That's more like a coach is really on the other side asking.
We've chosen to keep it more human led. And part of that is, I think something fundamental to us is that any journey of life requires human connection. If you think about everything that you've done in your life, I'm sure there's somebody you could point to. It was like, man, they were there for me. And I think we don't have enough of that anymore. And so, or we're losing more of it. Maybe I'll say it that way. So I want, as a platform, we try to push in a way with the technology that helps drive relationships and the growth in that space for an individual, because social is a dimension of holistic wellness that is important to nurture, and surrounding yourself with that support team is critical. But we want that to come from the human side. And it's not to say that AI, so I'm sure we've probably been jumping around this comment for a while here. It's not to say it doesn't have a role, but we see it as having a role, technology, AI, whether it's generative or automation, et cetera, to have a role in a way that's, one, supportive, So going back to supportive for the individual, supportive for the relationship, supportive for the practitioner, the organization, with the individual at the center. So supportive of how they're approaching and helping that individual achieve a journey. But two, intentional. Like, I'm tired of getting on and seeing a chat bot somewhere that thinks it's, hot because it can tell me every factor about, Ford's new F-150 to, its comparison to a Tesla Cybertruck. Like, come on, guys. Like, I don't need that. Like, I think we've lost that. That is not intentional. That is just throwing things out in the ether and hoping we get something back. And I think that's where technology needs to move as we go forward, is in a way that helps with that. So it's supportive and it's intentional. And so we purposely drive that back to practitioners today, because I feel it's important to have relationships. I wouldn't have been through my recovery, to go back full circle to where we started this, if I didn't have the therapist, the physical fitness coach, the therapist I was working with, if I didn't have them in my life.
Right. I think you'll appreciate this. I have a client who calls it, she built her dream team, because same thing, like you start gathering your resources. She pulled in dietitian and her PT, and then just her physician, like all of it. By the time it was all said and done, she had like 5 different professionals, all on, not all week or all month, but like at any given point, your person part out of your dream team that is helping you succeed in your journey. So to have everybody hosted somewhere sounds amazing. And it's interesting because I just had this client I think yesterday, go, I'm frustrated because I'm seeing my chiropractor and I've got a PT now on board and they're not communicating. And now I'm getting confused.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like exactly what you're talking about, right?
100%. I had a gentleman I've been talking about a partnership with, and he reached back out. He's like, man, I just went through a whole bunch of these longevity counseling exams, where they take a whole bunch of blood and they run a whole bunch of tests, and they come back with, well, here's what we think you should do to live an extra 50, 100, 200 years. Like, I mean, we go a little crazy here, but like, it was interesting. He was like, one of them just gave you the results and said, have fun. Okay, great. What do I do with this? Another one was like, well, we're going to get you set up with our doctor. We're going to get you set up with a therapist and a nutritionist and a few other things. So he starts having those meetings, and the same thing. He's like, so are your recommendations for the changes in my practice, my daily habits, aligned with theirs? And they're like, well, I don't know what they offered. What did they tell you? And he's like, are you kidding me? Like, you guys are all part of the same group. Like,
how do you not know?
So it's a problem. Yeah. And I think people are looking for solutions that don't compromise you. I mean, we see data breaches all the time. And I think for practitioners, it's seen as a massive risk, because it's like, okay, if I bring my clients into that world and something happens, that's on me, and that's my business and that's my livelihood. And I get that. But then for the individuals, it's like, oh, here we go again. Like, what part of me does the world not know that AI doesn't know? So now that, I get scammed around every corner because it has everything about me. And I think these are some fundamental challenges that we have to deal with as we talk about technology really playing a more supportive role in our lives, beyond just surface level fixes to, well, if you do these, 100 burpees a day, you'll have great abs, or whatever it might be that gets off.
Well, you're hitting the nail on the head. That, I mean, I've had the spectrum of the client who won't even sign up for a tracking app, like a Fitness Pal type of a thing, because they have to just put an email. I mean, the level of comfort of what they're willing to offer up. And then you have your individuals who don't care at all. But so beyond, like, how do you talk to your clients to kind of give comfort around? I know they can delete it, they can start it, but where's your comfort chat around that?
Yeah, so we are trying to be as transparent as humanly possible to everyone involved. So we kind of have a few different groups that we work with. We work with organizations, we work
Mhm.
with practitioners, and we work with individuals directly. And each of them is using the platform from a slightly different angle, but they're all using it with the idea of that the individual's at the center. So we've built it in a way that allows us to, I'm going to say, segment the individual's data so that they literally can see all of their own data. Like what has ever been collected on them becomes theirs. We've just built the technology from the ground up to do that rather than tried to piecemeal it on top with arbitrary, I'll say, privacy policies and privacy actions. It's built into the technology that way, where data transfers to the individual. And partly why we see that as successful is because really data in itself isn't helpful unless it has context, and it doesn't get context without you, an organization or a journey template or something that you've created says, well, I'm going to collect this data. We're going to go on this, journey for the next 6 months. We're going to do these practice or build these practices into your life, so on and so forth. If the data doesn't have that context, it really doesn't tell you much. It's just more data. And so that helps from a security perspective, but also helps, I would say, separate out for you as a practitioner how you can keep your stuff to one side and your clients to another side. And when you come together to, connect and work with each other, that's where we start to actually, I'll say, make the magic. And so we're constantly focused on security. I mean, it's the core of what we have to do, but we're also trying to think about it differently in the sense that it doesn't have to be explicitly linked in a way that means if one side gets, I'll say, hacked, the rest of the cards fall of the house. It's really trying to segment as much as possible.
Yes. Okay. And I'm going to take a twist here for a second or a turn. You use the word individual a lot. So I wanted to segue over to this. At one point, you and I writing back and forth, you mentioned what you have found to be the most empowering for individuals is the realization that everyone's path to success is very individualized, very unique as they are. And I realized that like your whole situation that you've built is unique and individualized to your client. But like, let's just talk about both of our passions for there's not a one size fits all journey, right?
Yep.
And it sounds like you kind of learned that through your own journey back to healing. Were you a believer of that before you went through something hard like that, or did that seal the deal for you?
I think it brought clarity to it for me.
Mhm.
Through I'll say my prior life with work, a lot of my success was driven off of working with people and helping to connect with them. And so I did a lot of program and project management work
Mhm.
and some very high stress, highly volatile situations. People are changing jobs are going away, new jobs are being formed, products are going to take over, technology is going to change roles. I mean, just tons of different, I'll say, ambiguity in life for the people that I was working with. And I didn't really fully appreciate how much emotional intelligence it takes to really help a team move through that way that's successful. And so the reason why I say it brought clarity to me when it came to when I got hurt in that situation was because at that moment it was kind of like a light at the end of the road finally showing itself in that this is what it means to really just understand and appreciate who it is you're working with and how unique they are and how complicated it is too. Like, I mean, shoot, something's happening at work. My physical, I got some herniated disc in my back, which materialized through stress. Like that's how the stress brought itself to life. And I'm glad it wasn't something worse. I probably could have had a stroke or a heart attack or something because stress is not good. Um, but that's how I would say that was my wake up call. And it was related to work. I mean, So all of these dimensions of wellness that we talk about, they're not just things that we can kind of shove aside and forget at any given time. And I think that's where the clarity came to life, is just in those same examples where I'm trying to work with a team. Well, what's happening in their life, personal, professional, mental, dot, dot, dot. All of these things matter. And I think that's really where it started to materialize for me.
Yeah, they matter. And it's not that simple, right? This is where, like, anybody who's beating themselves up because they're going, why can't I follow this program? Or why can't I adhere to this eating plan? And you're like, because it's not that simple, because of everything you're saying. There's the stress, there's the people in our lives who affect us. I feel like age, you mentioned clarity, and age has brought a lot of clarity around situations for me of like, what used to work before doesn't work now, or like that wisdom that comes that even from my clients who are aging and going through things like perimenopause. And it's like, you cannot just treat everyone the same. You will never help that individual get to their maximized results and thriving. But yeah, this is where I can see so much value in a place to hold these journeys and to be able to build on them and get our best self out of it at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's easy. Like we have, figured it all out. I think we're on a journey building this platform just like everybody is with all the journeys we've been talking about. And I think the biggest thing we're trying to do is listen and figure out what else needs to be there to help. So I don't, like, if somebody was telling me, is like, because I allow you, well, I guess I allow, like, because we've built into the platform the ability for you to own your data, and the way we view it, both from a technical perspective, a technology perspective, a process perspective, an organizational perspective, like all of those are in sync for us. You're not the product. We're not going to sell your data. Like, and so for us to be successful, we need to bring tools to life that can help you be successful. And that is where we're focused. That's where we're putting our energy. And it's not easy. Like, I just got off a call with somebody where we were talking about how if it were easy, somebody would already have done it. Somebody would have invested in it. Somebody would have put the energy in it. And I'm like, I think I'm that person. I really believe that, because I'm just so motivated by this potential for ourselves that we can get after it. And I hope it just gives that incremental improvement that somebody needs to keep them on the path, because I think that's the hardest thing. And I mean, technology won't solve and keep you on the path, but getting you back to those relationships that are, and then getting back to the core, like we were talking about at the beginning of, well, what were we trying to achieve by this? I think there's just some of the fundamentals that we can use technology to help us with.
Absolutely. Even you mentioning tools, because I always talk about our tools that we use. Not every tool works every day. We almost have this big red Santa Claus bag full of tools to pull from, and you have a place to host them.
Mm-hmm.
It's this beautiful like reminder of this has worked for me. This is, yeah. For anyone going, I would like to research this more, check this out. Where is the best place to find you and information?
Well, we're on social media, pretty active on Instagram and LinkedIn. So you can find us at hashtag #BeyondPlatform. But you can also go to beyondplatform.com and see what we're going after. Version 2 is coming out shortly, and we're excited about what that's going to bring for enterprises, for organizations, and really think about that dimension of human performance and what it means for folks. But tying it right back into what it means for me personally, because it's a third of the day, but there's still 2/3 we got to deal with. So yeah, those are probably the two big places you can find out. And I would say talk with your practitioners and your coaches and advisors and engage with them on the idea, because it's really going to be through them that this is also going to come to life.
Right. And if the listener's going, I don't have coaches, advisors, or
I need to call
practitioners.
you.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that's like the aha moment of you have not built your dream team yet. Like you need to be surrounded by accountability and support. We
Yes.
cannot do this alone. You probably have already said this, but I really like to ask this question. Like if you could wrap your arms around our listeners today and say, if you hear nothing out of me, what is this one takeaway that I hope that you hear today?
I'm going to say, you already said it, but I'm going to repeat it. Build the community.
Mm.
Like I get so much relief in my work week when I go to some community events at the end of the week that just rejuvenate me, get me ready for the weekend and set me up for success on Mondays when it comes to building beyond. And I would just say do that for yourself. Like don't go at it alone. Don't look for another AI coach. Use the time to find somebody that you can be with and be happy with, and yeah, your support team.
No, amen to that. Just that individuals, all ended too with individualized experience. And if you're looking for the cookie cutter approach, you're stagnating. You really have to eyes on your own paper, stick to your own journey and use beautiful tools like Beyond to keep your journey going. So thank you, Andrew, so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.